Down the long, winding road in Exeter Township, Birdsboro to be exact, there is a house. This house is called the Lizzie Lincoln House, because of the events that transpired there. This house has been around since the mid-1800s, so it makes sense that it has a history, on account of it being so old. But this history is what led to the fame and the ultimate abandonment of this house. But why was this place abandoned? Well, I've decided to find out. So without further ado, let's figure out the history behind the Lizzie Lincoln House. Ever since my cousin moved into a house in Birdsboro, we've been wanting to explore this old house along Lincoln Road, and one day we finally did. The day was July 4th, Independence Day. I was over at my cousin's house with my sister and my cousin's friend for the week, and we felt like the time was right for us to explore, so we got on our bikes and rode there. It took long enough, but we finally got there after 5 minutes of riding. The outside had a fence, so we had to crawl under it. It was at this point that I told my sister to start recording, which she did, and the footage is on screen. We looked around for the entrance, but the only opening was a window that had just had the barbed wire peeled away. It was at that moment that we realized what we were in for. Just a bunch of kids walking around in a house that we didn't know anything about. After a while of squabbling, my sister, Penelope, known on YouTube as Art Rocks, finally decided to step in. We were still scared about everything, and we could only get more scared as we went on. It became so terrifying that one of our own, Jacob, couldn't even bear any more and decided to leave. We didn't get very far in the house, but I'll describe what we did see. We went into a hallway, which led to another room, and in this room, we found some curtains and a fireplace. The fireplace had a doll's head in it, according to me in the video, but it didn't show up, so I can't confirm this. So, we kept going, and we found this other room, which was very dark, so it wasn't really shown on the camera, but what we did find was a fireplace with a fake spider web that Penelope noticed. This was interesting, because it didn't make sense that there was a fake spider web in an old house. It didn't really matter too much, but it definitely was off-putting. To the right of the room was what I could assume was a storage room, because there were a bunch of interesting items, including a carousel horse, some books, and a subdivision in this room. Peering over, it was filled with wall coverings. These were all over the walls, and they were decorated with red skulls. But the most interesting thing, well, at least to me, there was a sign. The sign wasn't all too interesting, as it was a fairly normal sign, complete with painted lettering, but what it said made everything make more sense. The sign was mostly obscured, but what I could read was, Lizzie Haunted House. I finally understood. That's why there was a fake spiderweb in the wall coverings. This was an attraction long ago, and this was something to note, so I kept it in mind. Other than that, the room didn't have anything else in it, so we ventured on. Luckily, this hallway looped back to our starting point, so we could tell where we were. There was only one other sensible place to go, upstairs. "There's no way we're going up there," Jacob shouted to us. We didn't listen, so he ended up leaving to guard our bikes. So we finally got to the landing, only a few stairs left. But there was something interesting about this part. There was a spooky painting, but that was most likely from the haunted house. The interesting thing was that there were no more wall coverings up the rest of the stairs. This could only mean that this wasn't part of the tour. This is another thing to note. But we went upstairs anyway. When we finally got to the top of the stairs, where everything looked brighter, this was because of an open window. Everything was illuminated a little bit better, but not quite. We still couldn't see in any of the rooms, but what we did see was a staircase, which must have led to the third floor. There was a hallway with 2 rooms, and there was also another room, but there was a carpet that hadn't aged too well, so we decided to go to the 2 rooms before we went to the next floor, but we never ended up going upstairs. We got to the 2 rooms and we went into the first room, but it was pitch black, and I can only assume that there were more rooms past there. The only thing I could see was a doorway to the second room. Right now seems like a good time to note there were no doors in any of the places we found, which is a little odd. But anyway, we started to go into the second room when Penelope pulled us out into the hallway, and she started telling us she was having a bad feeling about the second room. We started walking away when my cousin Zach really wanted to explore there. It was at that time that I noticed an eyeball in the wall. No, not like a prop or sticker on the wall, like an actual eyeball peeking out at us. Almost as soon as I noticed it, the eyeball ducked down, and I wasn't sure what to do. I just decided to stand there, pretending like nothing happened. But then Zach noticed it too. He tried in such a horrible way to nonchalantly make us go downstairs. I was confused because I could tell something was up. As we got out, I asked him what was wrong, and at that moment, I realized that maybe he could have seen what I saw, and my suspicions were confirmed when Zach said, I saw an eyeball. Both of our blood ran cold. Penelope noticed, and we all ran out together, resulting in the footage of us running away at the end. The video stops there, but we rode our bikes out of there as fast as possible as to not get caught by whoever was looking at us. This is another thing to note. Now, when we got back, I started doing some research, but before I tell you my findings, I want someone else to give their opinion. Someone who was also there. So, here to give her side of the story is my sister, Penelope, also known as Art Rocks. Penelope, can you describe what you experienced?
Although it was a sunny July day, the Lizzie house was quite dark. The floors, what we could see of them, were covered in mud, boards, and bugs. The floor looked unsafe, and the ceiling looked as if it was about to crash down. The walls bulged with an odd sort of inner wall. There were paintings of ghouls and devils painted directly onto the wall. The house had an eerie feeling to it. As we wandered into another room, it was the same. Cobwebs, mud, and faulty structure. The next room had a hallway that led off to more rooms and a winding stairwell. It also had a fireplace with fake spiders and webs in it. We ventured into the story. It had decorations and signs from when the place was an attraction. We finally decided to go upstairs. Jacob had left because he thought it was better for him to guard our bikes. Upstairs, where the attraction ended due to the second half of the stairs, where Lizzie Lincoln was allegedly murdered. The second floor gave me an even creepier and worse vibe. I ignored it until it got much stronger when we came near a room. It was pitch black and had a shelf at the very end. My cousin, Zach, wanted to see what was on that shelf, but I knew not to go in that room. The other room had dolls hanging up in it. At the end was a bright staircase leading up to the next floor. Zach started acting strange, saying he wanted to check something out downstairs. I followed him and Milo down the stairs and saw Zach heading for the exit. We climbed out the window, me being the last one out. Zach and Milo were talking about something they saw. I asked them, and they said they saw an eyeball. I ran and ended the video before we got out of the gate. While we were riding back on our bikes, Jacob said he had seen a person in the window. Then, Zach's shoe fell off. I stayed with him while he got his shoe back on. Then a minute later, my front bike wheel turned suddenly, causing me to fall to the ground. I picked myself up and we rode back in the heat. We were finally glad to get home.
Well, thank you, Penelope. If you are a fan of Gotcha Life or videos about guinea pigs, check out her channel, Art Rocks. Links will be at the end of the video and into the description. Anyway, back to what happened. After we got home, I ended up doing some research about this house, and here's what I found. I would just like to note that there are many variants to this story, but this is the most known one, and the one I personally believe. But I will be going over the variants after this. This is how the story goes. It was the mid-1800s, and Lizzie Lincoln had gotten married to a very nice man. All seemed well up until one day Lizzie fell under the weather. Now, what ailment Lizzie came down with is up for debate, but I personally think she had tuberculosis. Whatever the disease was, it made Lizzie bedridden, and they had to hire a live-in nurse to take care of her. Anyway, Lizzie's husband started having an affair with this nurse. This went on until Lizzie found out, and when she confronted him, he pushed her down the stairs, and she died instantly. Legend has it that she still haunts there, and one day, this was confirmed when a boy was assaulted by a group of teenagers right outside the Lizzie house. Tragically, he died, but the group was interrupted by the apparition of a woman, so they ran off. Later, a woman named Lizzie called the police to report a murder, but when they got there, nobody was there. Now, this is the most widely known iteration of the story, but there are other ways that this story played out. In some cases, Lizzie was pushed out a window. In some cases, Lizzie actually hung herself. Apparently there was rope to show this, but we didn't go to where it was, so I can't confirm it. In other cases, Lizzie wasn't sick, and there was actually a live-in maid who was there. In other cases, the husband ran away with his mistress, and Lizzie died there, and she still awaits for her husband to return. In other cases, she was going towards the medicine cabinet and was killed, and she can still be seen rooting through the cabinets. The final thing is that in some cases, there is a man with a club uniform and a sawed-off shotgun, and depending on what you hear, he was either Lizzie's male mistress or someone in her family seeking revenge for her husband's affair. Now, this is the story and all variants of it. As you know, I've scoured the internet for facts, and I've found some other things. These are all going in a section I'm calling The Media Uncoverings. So in order to find as much information as possible, I went everywhere. Articles, videos, descriptions of photos, comments on said things, and here's what I found. The first thing I stumbled upon was the Lizzie Lincoln YouTube channel. These videos were my first clue that led me down the trail. I started with their own uploads. They had a preview for a movie called The Man in White. This movie cost $15, but I don't have the money, so the trailers were the only thing I had to base it off of. I watched the trailers, and nothing really of interest happened until I read the comments, which still didn't have much, which I was hoping for more. I did find someone who said that he went into the basement, and nothing else. This haunted house promo is pretty interesting. I found it again in the Lizzie Lincoln YouTube channel in a playlist they made, and it had this haunted house promo, and there wasn't really much on it except for people asking if it'll ever come back. So I decided to move on. I found this article on this website called Reading Eagle that talked about the scary happenings that went on. To quote, people had seen the image of a woman whom Boyer named Lizzie standing in the kitchen looking through cupboards. Other times, Boyer would be playing an electronic organ and the instrument would suddenly shut off as the cord had been yanked from the wall. Lights seemed to switch themselves on and off, and footsteps could be heard at odd times. Some of this is quite interesting as it provides new information, but not too much new information. So I kept going on and found a forum on projectparanormal.org with a story. Now, I found this so interesting that I would like to read it in full. I'd like to read the entire thing. So, to quote, this is the story related to us in Devil Dancer, introduction post. I also wanted to put a copy of it here in the Ghost Forum, Kel. I have researched an old house and burial grounds in the area, Berks County. One particular summer, home took center stage for 2 years as I tried to decode the theory from unknowns. The story starts on Lincoln Road in Pennsylvania. I was reading the local paper and noticed a haunted house was being decorated for the annual October Scare. I contacted the owner and was given an appointment when I could tour the house. The lore of the house was in reference to Lizzie, a doctor's wife who died in the house. The home was a brick, 200-year-old house that was used as a summer home for a Philadelphia doctor and his wife, Lizzie. During one of their summer getaways from the hustle and bustle of Philadelphia, Lizzie became ill, and she had to be cared for by a nurse. On the fateful day, Lizzie uneasily rose from her bed and headed across the hallway to the medicine cabinet. Either Lizzie fell or was pushed by the nurse, as some believe. It was later discovered that the doctor and the nurse were having an affair. In any case, Lizzie laid on the bottom of the stairwell with a broken neck. Thus, we aptly have the poltergeist of Lincoln Road. Nights in these parts come quickly in October. I arrived at the summer house. The sun has long departed. I drove around to the back of the structure and found my guide to be a welcome sight. We entered this home that was surrounded by much mystery and stories that I could not have time to write. One of the noted stories involved a woman who drove past the house with her child as they rushed during mornings to get to work and school. Every day, the child would wave at the boarded-up house until finally the woman asked her daughter who she was waving at. The child said she was waving at the old lady standing at the window. Another story was about a couple who had company staying at the house. There was a pool in the back of the house. The lady visitor was in the pool while the homeowner went to change into swimming gear. The visitor looked up and saw a strange man peering from the attic window above the owner's bedroom, Lizzie's room. Her guest ran into the house to inform the owner that someone was in the bedroom, but after a thorough check, no one was seen or could have escaped the window. Could have escaped without detection. So, on this warm October night, my guide and me went into the house to ascend the staircase where he fell to her death. He was shaking by the mere entering of the house, but continued talking about his experiences concerning the house. As we entered Lizzie's bedroom, the temperature had fallen dramatically. A presence was felt, as if we were being watched from the doorway. I quickly made some notes and headed toward the attic crawlspace. As I left Lizzie's room and approached the attic crawlspace, my flashlight shut off and on 3 times. This occurrence again happened while exiting the rear of the house several minutes later. I halted and my guide and studied the flashlight for perhaps a malfunction. As suspected, the flashlight was working perfectly, but happily, my guide gave me an extra flashlight. We went to the side of the house where the basement could be sought. My guide chose to remain on the lawn as I swung open the cellar doors and climbed down a ladder. As soon as I reached the dusty dirt floor, my flashlight shut off and on 3 times. During those darkened periods, I thought of the stories surrounding the house and the cellar, where a corpse was found hanging off the meat hooks after the house was sold and renovated. I could not find any favoring or supporting facts to provide such truths. During these years, after visiting the house, strange occurrences happened in my own apartment. I would see a figure walking behind me in the reflection of the television screen. The fire alarm would sound in the most peculiar times. The most alarming experience was when I was doing door-to-door sales. Door-to-door is alarming itself. In Philadelphia, I entered a home of an English teacher who believed in paranormal experiences. As I stepped through the doorway, he asked me who the young man that was standing next to me was. He continued to say that there was an elderly woman on the opposite side. He described her. I realized that he had every fabric of Lizzie from Lincoln Road described in detail. I haven't had any poltergeist activity from Lizzie for some years, so I'm hoping she found a happier place to rest her energy. Devil Dancer. Now, I couldn't find anything to back any of these claims up, but a lot of this is new information, and it is always welcome to hear personal stories about the Lizzie house. So, after this, I went on another website, Flickr. A man named Dennis had taken a few pictures of the house, which are on screen now. Dennis gave a basic explanation of the legend. And, someone named Wicked Girl PA commented on this, and she said, "I've been there before. They make it up for Halloween. I hear a lot sound in there." Other than the poor grammar and the story that we already know, I think the few photos are quite beautiful, and I thank you, Dennis, for that. Wicked Girl PA, I assume what she was trying to say was that there are a lot of spooky noises, but I don't know. I can't really contact her because I was done 11 years ago, and so she probably wouldn't even know what I'm talking about. Next up was another great article, and this was from the website Jordan Cupper, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, .wordpress.com. This site was full of great info, but it already had stuff we knew. But like most things, the comments provided personal insight on the house. The first person claims that their friend can see and talk to Lizzie. That they and their friend can see and talk to Lizzie. Another great comment comes from someone named Abby, who claims to have been a part of the haunted house. Again, I'd like to read this in full. To quote, I worked at this when the house was a haunted attraction. I actually played Lizzie, and our roles were more actors that were playing out the stories of these ghosts. I may actually be the person sitting in the window in that one picture you posted, which is from the website. I was hired under strange circumstances. I was there one night to tour it, and it turned out that I looked like Lizzie, according to the crew. Also odd, the girl was playing her part had gotten punched in the face the night before and was in the hospital. I worked there for a few seasons, and had gotten very odd experiences of my own. The first night was training. I was stationed in the back bedroom at the back stairs. There was a switch to throw the lights between the black light and the entrance hallway when the people were coming into my area, and the lights were in my room. Every single time I would throw the switch, all the lights would not come on, and I would keep trying this until I finally got some guy from the next room, and every time he would come and throw out the switch, it would work fine. It happened the whole night. Also, when the lights would be out, I started to see weird things. At one point, the black light headpiece in the wall, which also kind of glowed in the dark, appeared to be mutating and growing hair. Later, despite the windows being pretty much sealed, light was dancing on the sheer curtains of the canopy bed and making creepy designs. It had no origin. Maybe this was my rite of passage? I also had other ominous feelings at the house. We were allowed into the attic, but tours didn't go up there. I went up there and was warned that Lizzie's husband supposedly haunted it. The attic is split into 2 parts, and once I entered the smaller portion, I got an oppressive, extremely suffocating feeling, like I was being watched. I left very quickly. Many of the other workers had similar experiences up there. There were many stories that we played out in the house, many characters. We were educated on the history, according to the company who ran the tours. And the company also ran boat trips on the Schuylkill River. Lizzie's story I portrayed was the wife of a successful businessman from Philadelphia, who invented the Atlantic City Boardwalk. Lizzie got very ill, and there was a live-in nurse hired. Lizzie's husband began having an affair with the nurse, and they conspired against Lizzie, eventually pushing her down the back stairs. It is unclear how the husband or nurse died. There are also reports of a man in a sports suit that would emerge from the backwoods with a sawed-off shotgun. People do not know exactly what his story is, but one was that he had an affair with Lizzie. It is also true that they had ghost hunters come and document the activity. There was many cold spots they registered in the house. They documented some sort of portal in the living room area, and I believe I saw her in the front yard. They picked up on the husband's presence in the attic, which was not friendly. There are also reports of ghost children in the building in the back, which was used as an office for the tours. In the course of the years I worked there, we had some interesting visitors, psychics. I remember one woman coming through and looking at the house, and instead of being terrified as most people were, she was looking around the room randomly, not even paying attention to the actors, and laughing. Turned out she talked to the owners after the tour and mentioned she was a psychic, and she said that all the ghosts were amused and happy about the haunted house tour. My best friend grew up across the street from the house also. She has many creepy stories about her firsthand too. This gives great insight as to what the haunted house is like, as there is not much info online other than this. And it's very, very interesting to note because it will come later. Something has to do with this. And other than that, there was a person who apparently got 3 scratches on her after going to the house. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a pretty big fan of the paranormal, and I happen to own 5 of the 6 books that were written by the world-renowned demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren. I know for a fact that the 3 scratches means demonic action. Well, usually, unless it was something more normal. But I was just about to give up and walk away, happy with all the information I had collected. But then, I found the Lizzie Lincoln Facebook page. This was so big, I've given its own personal segment. The reason that I'm giving this its own personal segment is because of what I found. There were so many photos to be found. Each one gave a little more insight as to what happened there. Here are some of the photos I found. As you can see, this is quite the gold mine to show what happened. Now, we have as much information about as we can. Let's go back to the footage. Besides the eye, which doesn't really show up, there are 2 clips in particular that stand out. But before we talk about that, I would like to talk about the eye. Based off of this, I would like to assume that my best assumption for what is happening was that the eye belonged to the husband, Lizzie Lincoln's husband. And I feel like that makes the most sense because he was documented in the attic, which was probably the 3rd floor, but I'm guessing he can probably be in the 2nd floor too. And the other 2 footage also have to do with the big long post that I read. The first one is a woman, and she says, "Don't go up there," while we're in the first room. Now, we didn't hear this when we first got there, so we only heard it in post. I'm going to play the clip for you now, and you have to figure out for yourselves what you hear.
I don't know if it's it's being here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Now, I do believe that this is Lizzie Lincoln saying, "Don't go up there." And this clip becomes a lot scarier when you consider the fact that she was murdered up there, upstairs. And I'm going to assume that the eyeball was Lizzie Lincoln's husband. But it could also be Lizzie Lincoln herself keeping a watchful eye on us. One of the 2. Or something else. I don't know. The second clip is a clip of a ghost child peeking up from inside the wall. This is the clip. And here it is zoomed on the ghost child. Abby, the girl who worked at the haunted house, did mention that there was something about ghost children, which confirms that it wasn't a lighting trick, which is what my mom thought. Other than that, it was a very creepy experience to go there. So, to conclude, I would like to talk about the house. Since we only explored so little, I would like to say where we'll have to go next. I eagerly await to go back, although it will be very scary. We still need to go to the basement, to the attic, in the room with the carpet, and up the stairs to the completely pitch black room. We still need to explore, and we don't know whose eye that was. But one thing is for certain. We have to go back. To explore, to document, to discover, and maybe to set Lizzie's spirit free.